Good evening, and welcome to My Mayor's Lecture Series. So far this year, we've heard on housing in Chester, gun violence, mental health, the Underground Railroad in Chester, and most recently, the MOVE situation and its connection here in Chester. Tonight, we're joined by representatives of the Domestic Abuse Project of Delaware County Incorporated, better known as DAP, D-A-P, who I will introduce in a few moments. Let's talk about the Domestic Abuse Project first. They briefly presented at City Council here at our last City Council meeting, and I wanted to bring them back to share more information and to answer any questions we may have here in the audience. As I'm sure they'll share more about DAP, it has a satellite office right here in Chester as well. So I want our residents to be aware of the resources available to them. This particular meeting was kind of put together last minute because who we had scheduled dropped out, and as soon as I saw you guys present in council, the first thing I told Justin was, we got to bring them back for the mayor's lecture. So thank you guys for being so accommodating to squeeze in, to fit in where somebody else dropped off, because we want to do this once a month, and this is the perfect once a month time, the first Tuesday, or the first Tuesday. Yeah, the election. We couldn't do it on election day, so we kind of squeezed it back a little bit. But a lot of this lecture series is not about who's in the audience, it's about recording the presentation that you have. So all of the lectures that I mentioned previously and the ones that are going to come up are up on the site, on the city's website. You can just go to chestercity.com/lectures, and it'll drop you right into the area where you'll see all the other lectures presented. So what we're doing is creating a collection of these, and it's going to be must-see TV. This is, as you can see, the 6th or 7th one that we've had. The Domestic Abuse Project of Delaware County is a nonprofit that was established in 1976 as part of a movement to provide safety, advocacy, and supportive services to victims of domestic abuse. DAP has maintained a satellite office in Chester for at least 20 years. That's amazing. With us tonight from DAP are Michelle Brown and Jordan Kelso. Michelle Brown is the executive director of DAP, bringing with her decades of director experience from the education and health spaces. Jordan Kelso is DAP's senior director of programs and has been with DAP for nearly 7 years. That's a lot of combined time to be dealing with a topic as serious as this. So all I can say now, without further ado, is please help me in welcoming Michelle and Jordan. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As stated, my name is Michelle Brown, and I'm the Executive Director of the Domestic Abuse Project. And I actually just started in this role about 15 months ago, but I've been in the nonprofit space for a pretty long time. I was happy to get back to have this opportunity at DAP because I grew up in Delaware County, and particularly here with the services in Chester. My parents taught in the Chester Upland School District for almost their entire career. I spent a lot of my summers and weekends and a lot of time at their schools helping out, and so it's nice to know that I'm back here kind of supporting the same community that they did for so very many years. The Domestic Abuse Project has been around since 1976, and we still remain the only provider of services exclusively for victims of domestic violence in all of Delaware County. We provide, I'll say just kind of a quick list first, and then we'll go into a little bit more of it later. 24/7 hotline, crisis counseling, advocacy services, counseling, legal support, housing and a safe house, community outreach, and a thrift shop. Let's talk a little bit about what we did in this past year and a little bit about our makeup. So the Domestic Abuse Project, we have a budget of about $3.2 million. 68% of that comes from government funding, 17% from private funding, and 15%, believe it or not, comes from our thrift shop. So we encourage everybody to go see Thrift and Thrive out in Pilgrim Gardens and make your purchases, do your Christmas shopping. And our services last year, so our Safe House welcomed 53 new adults and 76 new children were served in last program year. We had 487 walk-in clients, and we answered 3,898 hotline calls. We also did prevention education sessions for 2,453 people. So we have a lot of outreach. We have a staff of about 30. So it's a lot of work going on every day. But as Mayor Root said, particularly in Chester at our satellite office. And Jordan's going to talk to you a little bit about that.
Thank you. So our CDBG, or our Community Development Block Grant, makes up 63%, right? 0.63%, excuse me, that's a lot, of our overall budget. That budget does pay for our dedicated advocate. And as I said in our presentation before, it does allow an advocate to be in our satellite office for around 20 to 25 hours a week, but that does not count court time. So they might be in our office for 20 to 25 hours, but they could be in the city of Chester for an entire 40-hour work week. I like to think of the Chester office is almost like an emergency room or a triage unit. So when people come off the street, we're able to give them bus passes to get to our main office if they want to file for a PFA. We're able to help them file police reports. We are able to give them blankets or clothes or baby formula or anything that they need right then in the moment and kind of put a Band-Aid on it and then get them to the main office to give them our main services. So that's really important. Again, we're located on the 3rd floor of the police station at 160 East 7th Street. Our partnership with the Chester Police Department has been, it's what's made our satellite office successful. I've been here for 7 years, and prior to that, we didn't have the influx of people coming in. And I think that it's because that we've focused really strongly on our partnerships with the police department. We're making sure that they're giving us referrals, which is important. And we're also training them on DV 101. We're training them on the lethality assessment protocol, which is in layman's terms, it's an evidence-based questionnaire that police will administer at the scene of a domestic. If a victim screens in for a high risk lethality, then that police officer will call our hotline, and then we will provide early intervention. So that might mean that our hotline advocate will set up a taxi ride from the scene to our safe house and get them right into safety, and that will reduce, return calls to the home. And like I said, we do intake assessments, crisis intervention, victim advocacy, legal options counseling, which really just means going over your PFA options and criminal court options, what it might look like for that victim to file a police report. And we explain the entire criminal justice system from start to finish, so they understand what they might expect when we go in to speak to that officer. In the city of Chester, from July 1st, because that we go by our fiscal year, so from July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024, we served a total of 382 victims from the city of Chester, but we have served 208 new Chester victims. So what that means is we've had returning people, but we were able to, through our outreach events and just having our name out there, be able to bring in 208 new people, but we were able to serve 382 total. Our legal department that strictly does PFA representation was able to have 14 new clients from the city of Chester, which made up approximately 17% total of their new legal clients, which is huge.
Thanks, Jordan. I think, sometimes you look at those numbers and think, oh, that's really bad that numbers are going up. But the reality is that domestic abuse is happening regardless. And the fact that the numbers are going up for us means that people are hearing about us and that they are seeking the services. Certainly our goal is prevention, but it's a very lofty goal. So to know that people know where we are, know how to reach us, know what they can come for and what they can get, or even just are unsure but are comfortable is really a testament to the work of Jordan and her advocates and outreach and what they're doing. So we want to do just a little conversation about domestic violence and domestic abuse. And so just a quick content warning that if you are uncomfortable or feel something personal in any kind of way and you feel the need to get up and walk away, please take care of yourself and do so. Domestic violence, what is it? It's a pattern. It's coercive behavior used by one person to gain power and control. It's about power and control. It's not about anger management. It's not about getting back at somebody. It's not about, it might be a lot about things that have happened in your past that now you're bringing up, but it's about power. It's about having control over another person in an intimate or familial relationship. We often call it domestic violence, but it is also domestic abuse. It's known as battery, intimate partner violence, but can also be any kind of relationship that's in the household. So it can be adult children. It can be adult children with their parents, that maybe they're caretakers. It could be the parents. We do support children in counseling services, but not when they are the actual victim of abuse, only when they've been witness to the abuse. If they've been a victim themselves, then we would refer them out to an organization that partners with us and specializes with children. This that I'm showing here, and I imagine people on the TV can see our presentation. They cannot see our presentation. Okay, great. Okay, well, it'll be attached, and you'll be able to see the power and control wheel. And this power and control wheel is really important because it was designed by survivors for people to understand the different dynamics of power and control. And a lot of these tactics are things that, it's very familiar that you hear about, but most often people hear about domestic violence and just think physical violence. But it really goes much beyond that. It's emotional abuse, verbal abuse, physical, sexual abuse, financial, stalking. And some people, you might think, well, what's financial abuse? Financial abuse might be that I, along with my partner, we both have full-time jobs and we both work, we can make a paycheck, but at some point, my partner decided that they were going to control our bank account and they were going to control the money and I wasn't going to have any access to that. And that's financial abuse because I've earned that money, I have a right to that money, and I'm being held from that. And it's preventing me from living an independent life, should I choose. It's keeping me in power. Jordan, you want to talk a little bit more, maybe an example of one of the other types?
Sure. So we can start talking about sexual abuse or reproductive coercion. So it's flushing birth control pills. That could be one. Or forcing a woman to get pregnant every year. That's something that we see quite often. Physical abuse is self-explanatory. Verbal abuse is calling someone names, making someone feel small, belittling them. I think the main one that we're seeing currently would be technology and stalking. So every app you have on your phone is tracking your location, right? So Life 360, if anyone has Life 360 on your phone, you can see how fast you're going in your car. So we've had a client where their abuser wouldn't let them drive faster than 65 miles an hour. And if she went over 65 miles an hour, she was abused when she got home. So there's many examples of all of this, but I think the main thing would be to always turn off your location, be wary of what you have. I think another one would be Apple AirTags. We see a lot of that. We've had Apple AirTags sewn into purse straps. Yeah, so we have Blink cameras as well. That they will just log on and watch. It could be a lot of people have Blink cameras in their homes. I mean, I have Blink cameras outside of my home, right? So you can see who comes and goes, but people use that as a tactic. So it's all about documentation and making sure that you make a safety plan, which I'm sure we'll get into later on. Okay. Yeah. So the cycle of abuse. The first cycle would be tensions building. So that would be, like I said, so back to power control. So it could be verbal abuse, right? So the names you're calling, you're fighting, or maybe he's mad that you're going out with your friends a lot. The incident then occurs where maybe it's escalated to the point where he or she, or the one choosing abuse, then decided to physically abuse the victim. The next stage would be reconciliation, and that is when all promises are made. This stage is usually when false hope is given, where I promise it won't happen again. Please, let's just move on. This used to be kind of referred to as the honeymoon phase. We kind of moved away from that. Now it's the reconciliation phase. And then we're back into the calm phase. And then it moves on again, and the cycle continues until that victim comes to us and we help her break, or him break that cycle of abuse.
Thanks. And that cycle of abuse is something that can start off happening maybe once, and then maybe 6 months later, but then maybe 6 weeks later, and then maybe 3 weeks later, and then maybe every day, and then maybe multiple times a day. And that's when we know we have a problem. But at that point, the victim might be in a situation where they don't know how they got in that situation, and they don't know how to get out. And maybe it's not physical abuse, so they feel like, well, why am I going to call a crisis hotline? I'm not hiding in a closet trying to escape. This isn't a great relationship. I'm not treated well. I'm not giving independence, but it's not a crisis. But that's not what it's about. Being able to call us for any reason that you feel like you're being abused, or you're having power or control exerted over you, it's stopping you from living any kind of life that you want to live. That's a reason that you can call us. Because it is prevalent in the United States. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men report having experienced severe physical violence from an intimate partner in their lifetime. It's pretty staggering if you think just even in your own circle. You pick out 3 women, 1 of them has probably experienced it in some form at some point. 1 in 5 women and 1 in 13 men have experienced contact sexual violence by an intimate partner. And the last is what Jordan spoke of with stalking. 14% of women and 5% of men report having been stalked by an intimate partner. And again, this is across the United States. When we drill down into Pennsylvania, 37.1% of women in Pennsylvania and 30.4% of men will experience intimate partner violence in their lifetime. And that really goes against what a lot of people think about when they think about domestic violence. They think it's a women's issue, but it's really an issue for everybody. Every year, the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence puts out a fatality report. And the fatality report for 2013 came out recently, and it showed that 113 victims lost their lives due to domestic violence in Pennsylvania. 77 were female and 42 were male. In Delaware County, 6 victims lost their lives. 1 was female and 5 were male. When we look at the causes of death, the means by which people were killed, 77% were shot. I know one of the lecture series that the mayor had a few months ago was on gun violence, and we all know what a challenge gun violence is, and even more so when you think about domestic violence, because that is, in the end, often the means that someone chooses to end someone's life is by gun violence. So 92 of those 119 people were shot, 16 were stabbed, 4 were beaten, 2 were strangled, and 5 or something other or unknown. A little bit about the impact on children. We talked about how we do counseling for children, but who aren't victims themselves, but they are witness to it. And that is equally as damaging as if they are a victim of a physical violence themselves.
Children exposed to violence in their home are 15 times more likely to be physically and/or sexually assaulted than the national average. Domestic violence in childhood is directly correlated with difficulties with learning, lower IQ scores, deficiencies in visual motor skills, and problems with attention and memory. Those who grow up with domestic violence are 6 times more likely to commit suicide, 50% more likely to abuse drugs and alcohol, and 74% more likely to commit violent crime against someone else. And 1 in 3 teens in the U.S. is a victim of teen dating violence, which involves physical, sexual, emotional, or verbal abuse from a dating partner. So one of the major questions that we always get, especially when we're doing presentations like this, are why not just leave? And some of the main reasons are fear. I mean, the number one reason is fear of their life. Other reasons, and actually, so that used to be 7. So on average, it used to take a victim 7 times to typically leave, but now we know it's 12. So it has now increased to 12 times. Since the pandemic, it has now increased to 12. But some of the other reasons are economic barriers, lack of resources or family support, children. We know animals are huge. We have partnerships with local adoption agencies due to that reason. Like I said, just danger. Fear of deportation, that's huge. And then we have cultural or religious expectations or perceptions of the legal system. So those are some of the main reasons that people don't just leave.
No, yeah. So when you get the packet, when you send out, we're going to skip through a few of these, but you'll have the information if you want to look at it. But what can you do if domestic violence is disclosed to you or suspected? Your initial response is really important because it takes a lot for somebody to say, I'm in this situation. There's a lot of shame involved. There's a lot of embarrassment. Often somebody maybe doesn't have somebody to talk to because on purpose, they've been isolated from family and friends, right? That's a tactic of an abuser to take someone away from family and friends. And so if I have not spoken to my friends in a few years, I may feel like I can't call them because, they're maybe not going to take my call. So one, taking the call, and listening and not shaming a person or saying, well, where have you been? Conveying empathy for the person. So a little bit more of just what I said. Make sure that they feel comfortable. They have experienced fear. They might have anxiety. They maybe have some shame. And certainly give them our hotline number. Our hotline number is 610-565-4590, and it is a 24/7 hotline. Someone will answer day or night. And let them know that when they call the Domestic Abuse Project that they will be listened to and they will be supported without judgment. And everything that we talk about will be confidential. No one will know that they came. If someone asks or someone wants to say, are you serving this person? Are you helping this person? We neither confirm nor deny that we have worked with a person, which is challenging even to work with community partners. When we're trying to get people services, it makes our job harder that we can't talk about the client that we're serving, but we take it very, very seriously. And so you can rest assured that that will be confidential and without judgment. When people are calling us, we work under what's called an empowerment model. So we are not going to do things for you. We're going to help you and give you the resources that you need to do them for yourself. So when somebody calls, we want to make sure we're giving them phone numbers, we're giving them alternatives, we're giving them safety, working with them on a safety plan. How can they feel comfortable in the situation that they're in? Because like Jordan said, it's going to take 12 times for somebody to really make that decision. And maybe you're in a situation where you're not ready to make that decision. We can help you create that plan for when the violence escalates, for when the abuse escalates, to keep you as safe as possible in the decision, in the situation that you're in. We're not going to judge you and say, well, you really just should leave, and you didn't leave, and so you've made your bed. That's not ever what we're going to do. It's like a parent trying to guide a child, and you feel like what's going to happen if they make this decision, but you have to let them make that decision and then just be there, when they come back. And so whether you call us one time or you call us 100 times, we're going to take that call. You can if they're in Chester, you can refer them to the Chester office. I think calling the hotline is the best option though, since we are only in the office part-time. But you can call that number, 610-357-6957. And we are on the 3rd floor there, so you can stop by and see us. And maybe just a little bit more, Jordan, about our individual services.
So as we already said, we have a 24/7 hotline. Safety planning, very briefly, it can be as simple as change your locks, change your phone number. It can be making sure you have like a go bag that's filled with passports, your birth certificate, an extra pair of clothes, toothbrush in your trunk of your car that's ready to go at any moment. So we always make sure that we talk to individuals about safety planning and what that looks like for you. Safety planning for one person will not be the same for another. So we definitely go into more depth about that with each person on the phone. We give external and internal resources while on the phone for hotline. We have short-term counseling that typically lasts between 12 to 16 weeks, and then after that we will refer out if still needed. We have legal services that includes PFA representation. We have an emergency shelter that houses 11 families, 11 families, 35 people total. We have housing and relocation programs, court and civil advocacy, which means that we have someone sit with you and explain the civil and criminal justice process, and also police advocacy, which is what I talked about earlier, like helping you file police reports, going, if you needed to make a bail argument, you didn't want to go by yourself, we would go with you. We do outreach and prevention, so going to schools, going to community events. We're going to Chester Police Department's Trunk or Treat tomorrow, so that's part of what we do. And then Thrift and Thrive is our thrift store that's located in Drexel Hill and Pilgrim Gardens. Okay.
Any questions? Okay.
Make sure we're gonna ask a question. We got to hear you, and it's not us. It's for the recording.
So are the narcissists, is that part of the people that like abuse the narcissists, like the people that have, they talk about that on Facebook all the time. This person did, this person, yeah. Okay. And I want to find out, being that we're the people that are mandated reporters, when our friends report something like that, are we by law? Oh, I have to. Oh boy. Okay. All right. You are too.
Yeah, so that is the only exception to confidentiality is that we are all mandated reporters for child abuse. So if we learn of child abuse, we must report that. But that aside, but the adult, if an adult,
Are we mandated reporters even with the adults? If they're abused, I'm saying.
no,
No,
nope,
only for children.
only for children. Yeah, only for children. Yeah, everything else is confidential. Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, I got some questions. So stay on up here.
All right.
In fact, we can leave this here.
All right.
So, I'm considering the population here in Chester. There's many single mothers, single fathers, but abuse can occur between the mom and dad and the children. But then there's the married couples where there could be abuse amongst the spouse, the husband, and the children. I'm curious, for a couple that is abusing in the house, but realize they want to save the marriage, help the marriage, do they think of you first, or do they think of, oh, we need a marriage counselor? And if marriage counseling is considered, I guess with all things created equal, let's assume they know that your services are available and counseling is available, and they choose to go to counseling first. Would you say that's the right way to go? Would you say that marriage counseling is more effective than what you guys do, and does it all depend on what the abuse is? Or I guess I can ask, in addition to that, how can marriage counseling and what you do work together?
So I would say it depends on physical safety, right? So if they're fighting in the home and it's just a bad situation, we have many we all know there are some marriages where they're just fighting day in and day out. It's not a healthy household. It's not great, right? But it's not physical. It's not, I don't know, I don't want to say the word, but it's not,
Well, it's not consistently demeaning. It's not.
Yes.
There's not a
Yes.
pattern. Right?
Yes.
There's not a pattern of that control.
Yes.
From
I think
one
that's the
over
key
other.
word. I think that's the key word is when there's that person trying to exert that control over another. I think that is when we would come into play versus a marriage counselor, right? Now, it depends on the person. Everyone's different. If they want to go that route, then that's that's their path. That's what they want to do, right? But if they're afraid for their physical safety and they know that they need to go, we're probably the best people to come into contact with. We can work in conjunction, right? But yeah, I think it all depends.
Okay, so let's put another spin on that. When I think of marriage counseling, it's usually husband and wife going to sit down with a therapist. I can only imagine that if there's an abuse in the house, the one that's being abused is seeking out your services. So you're seeing more one-on-one than you are couples. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, we do not see couples. We
You
only
do
see-
not see couples? Oh, okay. So that clears that up.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, truthfully, like a law office, you know, if somebody comes to us and then their abuser comes to us, we cannot see the abuser. We can, because of that confidentiality, we wouldn't want them seeing each other there, right? We wouldn't want them seeing their spouse there, and so we would have to, we wouldn't be able to accommodate the other person. Yeah. But it's, you know, I'll add on to your point, because I think often people might seek their pastor. You know, people might go to church and might seek their pastor. And maybe a month and a half ago, we had a session for interfaith religious leaders to come together and learn about domestic violence too, on how do you approach someone if you see it, or how do you help someone, and how do you help, you know, the covenant of marriage, but also recognize safety. And what Jordan said, I think, is what's key to keep in mind, is when there is that power really put on somebody else, and when it's dangerous, when it's physical safety, safety of life or death, you know, that's when you really have to think about it. And if you think about the statistics about children in a home where that's happening, you know, thinking about how is it impacting your children.
So that's an interesting point about the pastor. And I think it puts pastors in a difficult position, because oftentimes I would imagine they're teetering on whether they're going to play the role of counselor, marriage counselor, or someone who's just going to make it safe. So I think you said that you help advise pastors or the church community and how to handle that type of stuff?
Yeah, well, a basic, you know, even just a basic course on what does it look like, you know, why isn't somebody going to leave, when does it cross that line, you know, and I think for a pastor, it's maybe to know that we have these services to say, this is dangerous for you. I appreciate and understand and maybe want to help you, you know, keep your marriage together, but for your safety, maybe you should have that alternate plan ready, you know, and just making sure they know what we can offer. Because culturally, religiously, you know, marriage is not going to end. It's not going to be broken. They feel they must stay in this marriage, and that's a choice that someone might make. And you know, how can we support them best? And maybe it's trying to suggest that the abuser goes to counseling and they go to counseling and they, you know, they figure out as best they can, you know, but they're only going to do what they're going to do.
Did you talk about like once they get into the safe place? Did you really go into depth about that? I think we need to talk about how safe the safe places are against the abuser and people that maybe, you know, can continue to harm the victim.
Yeah.
So before you answer that, if I'm a husband and my wife is at a safe place, where's my wife? So how's that work?
Well, hopefully they wouldn't know that they were with us, because we wouldn't tell you. You know, we wouldn't let you know that. Our safe house is in Delaware County, but the address is confidential. When you enter the safe house, you sign, you know, a lot of papers saying that you're not going to tell anybody. There's always a chance that somebody is going to tell somebody, but it's a secure building. We have a very good relationship with the police in that vicinity as well. People are safe in our safe house. We don't, when someone gets dropped off at the safe house, they do not actually get dropped off at our safe house. They get dropped off at a different location, and then, you know, we'll move it from there. No, we don't blindfold anybody. You know, we have special, yeah. And from the outside, you wouldn't know, right? It's just a building. You wouldn't know it's just a house, you know. And so we do have those relationships. So when you enter the safe house, the hope is that you can find some place to go, and we can support you for, you know, 30 days. The reality is more like 5 months right now, because there's nowhere to go, nowhere, especially if you haven't been working and you have no access to money, if you've left all of your funds, how are you going to do that? And so we'll help support you with your resume and trying to find a job, trying to figure out childcare, and how can we get you to a place that's affordable. We do have some housing programs. We work through HUD with rapid rehousing, so we have not many spots where you just applied for an expansion of that. But our case manager will work with you and work with landlords in the county to find affordable rent. Our program through rapid rehousing will subsidize that rent on a, kind of on a scale, and on a scale that will decrease over time for about a year, to really help you get back on your feet and make sure that you're working and finding a job, and and that you're safe. We also have funds for relocation. So say you have some family in a different part of the state, other side of the country, and you want to get back. We will help you with your plane ticket, your bus ticket, you're moving, whatever you need to get you safely to that location.
Because I think that's why a lot of people don't report it, because they maybe depend on that person for finances. So now that since you brought that up, they can just get out of there and get safe and still be able to get themselves on the right track financially, and support themselves and their children, or vice versa with even the males. Do you sometimes see where the males take the children with them, or they tend to always stay with the wife?
No, it depends. Yeah, it does depend. We do allow men in our safe house, or we could put them in a hotel, and we do have men that will come with their children. Yeah, because they're escaping that just as much. Sometimes people will stay in that relationship until the abuse goes to the children, right? And that's often when the mother says, "Okay, I'm okay. I was okay with just me, but now I'm ready to go." And so that might be the time when they make the decision to go. Yeah.
Great segue into my next question, and it has to do with children. These days, there's nothing more scarier to a parent, especially a firm parent, than having a kid say, "You touch me one more time, I'm going to pick up that phone." So a parent, I know parents who feel like they've lost control of discipline in their house. They've lost control of giving their children what they consider clear direction on what's right or wrong. So I'm curious, how much power do children have, and are they considered always making the right choice in calling that number? It's like if there's an abuse situation. One of the more troubling abuse situations you see is that a husband and a wife, getting back to that scenario, they're arguing, they're upset, and somebody just flies off the handle and may push the other. And then they'll go and they make that phone call, and the police show up and they take the other away. And then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, wait a minute, Mr. Policeman, I didn't want that to happen. I just wanted to scare him or her. Or I was just in that space right then and there where I didn't know what to do." But it's too late. You've made that call. We know how it works on the adult end, but how does it work on the child end? Like, the child is far more empowered now to seek help at a super young age than probably ever before. I guess my mom, if I were to run through a scenario like that, she's like, "You would never even get to that phone, boy, or I'll beat you up with the handle if you even attempt to make that call." But there weren't numbers for me to call when Dad was punishing me, and oftentimes I felt the punishment was way more severe than the crime. Today, kids feel empowered. So how's that work in a household? How does it work for you?
Yeah, I'm going to give that to Jordan, but I first will say to your point about the call, that, "Oh, I didn't mean," that's when that lethality assessment protocol really is helpful for an officer to know, like, what level is this really on? Is this DAP worthy of, calling the hotline, or do we need to hash this out a little bit?
I think your question might be more geared towards CYS. Only because when they are children, we don't, like Michelle said, we don't really serve children who've been victims, only witnesses. I will say that our criminal court advocates, if they are teenagers and they are victims of teenage dating violence, we will be involved then. There's been few exceptions when there's been some severe parental abuse, but only because we were asked to because of another agency not being able to assist. But we leave that to CYS and the Children's Advocacy Center. They're just the experts when it comes to child abuse. But CYS would be your better question to differentiating that.
That's good. Yeah, and I think that's what we're learning here is what agencies support what issues.
And you can call us and we'll refer, so if you're confused or you don't know, I mean, just call, right? And we have all the lists of all the resources, and so we can send you to the right place. One of the dynamics that we haven't talked about and that people don't recognize either is sometimes aging parents, maybe whom one now has dementia, and who was a loving, caring, wonderful partner with no sign of abuse ever of any kind, and now in this new mental state, they've become abusive. And that's a really hard situation for somebody who knows that their spouse is not intending to be mean or intending to abuse, but it is a pattern now, and it is not safe for that person. And so how do we navigate that and get them both the help that they need? But it is something that is on the rise and recognized and needs to be recognized more because it does happen.
Does the Department of Aging get involved in the case like they do a senior citizen? Do they get involved?
They did not get involved in the 6 or 7 cases that I've had when that unfortunate defendant was put in jail for aggravated assault. Sorry to bum me out.
There's a lot of learning for everybody, right?
Yeah. No, it's a shame, but it's mental health court, and sometimes they're not. It's too hard. Sometimes they're not deemed competent, but then they end up being deemed competent, and they don't qualify for certain things. But it's a shame, and it's just more reform needs to be done with our court system. So.
All right, thank you. The information is amazing. You gave us a little more light than what we had at council. The slide deck is going to be a part of what you'll see online with this. The wheel really opened my eyes to a few forms of abuse that I wasn't aware of. And I'm beginning to wonder, am I being abused? There was something on that wheel that made me kind of like, hope my wife ain't watching tonight. No, but this is...
All of our services are free and confidential.
Maybe I'll slide over. I just don't want to end up in a safe house. I really don't.
We also have hotel options as well.
All right.
I will say just one more thing is that if anyone watching has any outreach opportunities for us in the city of Chester, that is something that we desperately need to be more involved in. We are involved in the charter schools, but not enough in the public schools. So anyone, any connections, if you have any connections, we need to be involved more. It's a great city, and we're lacking in the connections. So any help. Thank you.
And I think teen dating is the thing that you touched on very, very briefly, but we do work with teenagers, and so education for middle school before they're really getting into those relationships. It's 1 in 3 teenagers in the United States experience some form of domestic abuse before they turn 18. So it happens, and it happens frequently, and people just don't know what it is, don't know what a healthy relationship looks like, and so we can help with that too. Thank you.
That kind of reminds me of a time I was working. Justin's heard every story I've ever told, so you'll have to hear this one again. But it's interesting to see how these things intersect. So you do what you do, marriage counselors do what they do, child and youth services do what they do. They all have their specialty, but it's like a big Venn diagram. There's always that stuff in the middle. And I think about the workplace and the stuff that goes on here, and we have HR departments that kind of work through those issues. And I remember being in a workplace where sexual harassment was identified, and a guy was literally just sent home because of a sexual harassment incident. And he was so confused because he was like, what did I do? And I'm going to demonstrate what he did. He was one of those guys who would say, how you doing today? Well, you weren't the one who reported him. It was you, because you felt that that was harassment. You didn't like seeing him hey, how you doing, to people like that. And the HR director was really good, and they came around the workplace, and we were all in cubicles, so one little section at a time. She explained to us third-party sexual harassment in those areas. And then there was that one, there's always one, right? That one guy standing outside his cubicle who opens up the drawer, gets some duct tape, rips it out, and starts putting stuff on the floor, and everybody's, what are you doing? He was creating his HR free zone. Like, don't cross the line, I don't want to be involved in any of this. So it was a weird situation, but it just shows that, like, even in the workplace, this type of stuff happens.
It happens everywhere, doesn't it's domestic violence, all of this happens everywhere. It's not just in underserved areas. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And I think people need to talk about it more, and that's why we're here. So again, outreach, please.
Yeah, I mean, and, you know, in the workplace too, it's recognizing that, like, you may have an employee who suddenly is coming to work late all the time, and you're like, well, what's wrong with this flaky person? But maybe that person is being stalked and trying to get away, or maybe they're covering a bruise up before they come to work. Like, how can we just create a space where we can recognize and just pay attention more, be more aware, and where people can feel comfortable coming to HR, coming to someone, and where we can have the resources in our bathrooms and in our, you know, common spaces so that somebody can get that if they want. Yeah.
On one of my previous jobs, one of our, like, a big wig, she would always come in with a broken arm, and she said, "Oh, the dog, the dog tripped me." We like, We said no. We have thought that's what's happened. Her husband was abusing her, but we just gossip amongst ourselves. But we always said, Some people just, they good at hiding because of their profession. Like, they may be an attorney, the husband may be an attorney, and they try to hide that stuff. But should we have mentioned it to her, or should we have brought it up or to authorities, or what? Because she was always broken up, an arm, or it was always crazy.
Yeah, I think you do whatever you're most comfortable with, and maybe that's when, if you have a hotline card, you know, slip it in her bag, or slip it under, not in her bag, maybe on her desk, because you don't want somebody to take something home that's going to get them in trouble, right? But, you know, or just somebody need to talk to her. You know, that's the shame part. You know, if I'm in a high-powered position and I need to exude a certain kind of, like, look, you know, and feel, then, and I don't want to show somebody that, or maybe I'm, you know, in denial myself. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I got to end on probably one of the most famous quotes ever when it comes to violence and abuse, and it was Rodney King when he's laying there getting beat to a pulp, and he said, "Why can't we all just get along?" Wouldn't that be a perfect situation? It's because we just can't get along too often, or there's too many times when we're not getting along, when we're finding ourselves in combative situations, when we act out in ways that is not helpful and, in fact, you know, very harmful to not only the victim but to the person who is victimizing. You know, it's the guilt, it's the shame, it's the, "Oh, baby, I didn't mean to do it. Come on back in. You know, we have this great relationship. Let's keep it strong." And then there's something that triggers more abuse. Thank you so much for coming in today and sharing how you help address those situations. Thank you for have been in Chester for as long as you have, and it sounds like you have a sense that you still haven't touched as many people around here as you could and should. So the purpose of bringing you guys in today is to kind of give you a platform to amplify your services and yourselves. I mean, you guys are true professionals. It's not just a acronym. It's not just a program that's over in the police department. These are real people who have a real passion for what they do. And I really am honored to have you here to share with the audience. For people who will be seeing this, it is on video. When it does come out, which will be a day or two, when you go to view it, there will be a link that you can copy and share with every and anybody who needs this. So that's the real purpose of this mayor's lecture. It's not so much for an audience. This isn't all about that. It's all about capturing, an audience of 1 or 3 in this case, but it's really all about capturing the information in a digestible form that can be shared to others. So thank you again for coming in on such short notice. You guys are amazing. Let's give them all a hand. Let's sound like we're in an auditorium. Let's sound like this is a political rally. Let's You guys have a good night. Thank you so much for watching, and watch again and again and again, and please share this with people who really need it. There's a lot of information here that's super important.